Go for it.
All right, thank you. I really look very affirmative about the editorial board meetings. I think it's a great opportunity to have a chance to say some things, let you talk about some of the things that I've been doing, and then have that opportunity for back and forth and to answer some of your questions. So I'm delighted to join you this afternoon. Let me just make a few points to you. My efforts in the last, well, it really is pretty consistent, but my efforts in the last, couple of years have been focused, if you will, on the economy. My view is the greatest economic challenges that face the country today, and really face the families, is that they're in jobs that just don't pay them enough money. We are in a situation where we have seen wages stagnant, for the last 30 or so years, and what's happened is that families really are struggling today. You saw the report that the United Way put out, asset-linked, income-constrained, employed. People are employed, but are just not making it. So no one is talking about a retirement account or a vacation. They're talking to their kids about the inability to be able to send them to school if there's anything else. And so the discussion around this issue is what I see as really critical, and that's the stark economic challenge for the country. And my own view, you look at what are long-term and short-term opportunities to address this issue. And in longer term, clearly education, increased opportunity for education, and that is, a preschool, K through 8, high school, opportunity for college education, job training opportunities, all those critical to fostering opportunity for people that allows them to gain a better economic advantage. That's something that is long-term, and in that category I also put infrastructure. I think that is really is a real engine of growth, and when I speak about infrastructure, it is not just roads and bridges, though critically important, but it is about energy, an energy grid, and environmental infrastructure, ports, airports, telecommunications, broadband. We still have some places in Connecticut, rural parts of Connecticut, who don't, not up to speed, if you will, with broadband. That too, infrastructure is more long-term in terms of helping to create that economic or being that economic engine. So then we look at what the short-term measures are in order to relieve the wage pressure that people have today. And look, any discussion of income inequality has got to start with the issue of wages and stagnant wages. So there you talk about increase in the minimum wage. And 2/3 of women are minimum wage workers. You talk about equal pay for equal work. Men and women in the same job should get the same pay. Paid sick days. And today it's only about 40% of people in the private sector have one paid sick day. Families don't enjoy that. If you take a day, you may lose your job. Pay family and medical leave. We're the only country, I guess, except for Papua New Guinea, that doesn't have some sort of a maternity leave, paid family leave kind of program. I put in this basket college affordability, and if you take a look at what Sanders and Clinton talked about, $125,000 or less, tuition is free. Child care affordability. I was in Middletown yesterday, and I was talking to the young woman, Izzy Greenberg, who is a dynamo, has done so much thing with low-income families. $15,000 as an average for child care. You have 2 kids, $30,000. One of the women who couldn't be at the the press event yesterday, I was talking about the Young Child Tax Credit, which I just introduced, which is another, I'm very excited about it. Her child care failed. So she had her husband couldn't do it, so she had to stay home. She couldn't get anyone to take care of her kids in order to be able to do it. So that affordable child care is something that is critical in this regard. And that's just her whole work-family agenda. And a young child tax credit, a child tax credit, refundable tax credits, that whole basket of refundable tax credits, I think help to lift, take that pressure off people's wages, allow them to be able to thrive economically. So that's the agenda that I fight for in Congress and have been not just this year or last year. Paycheck fairness I introduced in 1997. An infrastructure bank I introduced in 1994. Paid sick days in 2005 along with Senator Kennedy. Several years ago, Senator Gillibrand and I did paid family and medical leave. And I've done all kinds of things with affordable child care. Another point to make with you is that, people say, why do you, in the kind of polarized atmosphere in which we exist these days in Washington, why do you keep banging your head against the wall, and people are frustrated about what they see as the polarization because, they say, what about me? What are you doing that is going to help me and my family? Well, look, I take my cues on that issue from my folks. And many of you know my history. It's my parents' brand of politics, which is that what we're about. And they didn't write omnibus pieces of legislation, but what they did was they worked with the community and their constituents, etc., to make sure they helped to try to address their needs and the problems that they have, and that they believed that there was a role for government to play and that government could create opportunity. And that's where my brand of politics is, that government can create opportunity. And when I look at folks who say to me, well, why do you do this? Well, you do have an opportunity, even in these circumstances, to increase the funding for the biomedical research, increase money for the NIH. You can introduce a young child tax credit. You can engage in efforts that I think are critical to families today, and that you try as best you can to make government work in terms of what people's interests are, and you push the federal agencies. You have a chance to push the federal agencies to do the things that they are supposed to be doing. And as an example, the Department of Labor, with an overtime rule, with lifting the ban on women, men and women being able to discuss their salaries without fear of retaliation. All of those, that's just pressure on the agencies that it is allowed for that to happen. Discrimination against the LGBT community. So again, why you continue to fight in this atmosphere. Let me make a point about the election, and that it's from the standpoint of some of the issues that I've been talking about. Hillary Clinton's going to win the election. I believe we will win the U.S. Senate. I think we will gain significant number of seats in the House of Representatives. I think there's an opportunity to win, but I think that's a glimmer of a chance to win the House. But I think we get close to a working majority. And why do I say I get excited for? Because the issues that I've been talking about, equal pay, paid family leave, paid sick days, an infrastructure bank, affordable child care, the college affordability, I believe, these are front and center in the presidential debate. Hillary Clinton is out front on these issues. I think in the first 100 days, as she has talked about, we're going to see she's going to move to an infrastructure bank, the equal pay issue, and some of these other areas, schedules that work for people. All of these things, I think, are now front and center. The items that used to be viewed as fringe or only affected women. These are working family, middle class family issues today, and that is directly a part of the political discourse in the campaign. And for me, that's an exciting prospect, that those issues that I have spent a lot of time working on will be front and center. A couple of comments about the district accomplishments over this period of time. I'm blessed. I have great staff people, and they closed in this cycle about almost 2,500 cases, and people coming through the door or calling or so forth on issues, that concern them. We were able to get back for constituents about $2.1 million. That's in back benefits, or whether it's Social Security or other kinds of benefits that they couldn't get without our help. We're dealing with grants, $1 million for the firefighters and safer grants. The recent $20 million in the Tiger grant, where we were on the roof of the garage, Temple Street Garage, the other day. And prior to that, $16 million for the first portion of Downtown Crossing, in which I have been directly and intimately involved in these efforts and getting. And what does the Downtown Crossing mean? That's about jobs, both temporary and permanent. It's about economic development. It's about revitalization of a city. So we worked, and I was just in Ansonia today with the Naugatuck Heritage study area. But we were able to get an EDA grant for Ansonia of $1 million. That opened up about 44 acres for a business park there. Dredging the New Haven Harbor, again, economic sustainability for the region. The Pondley Dam in Woodbridge, which we worked at in order to fix because of the flooding there. The BIA ruling that allowed us to minister to the needs of the Connecticut residents about not allowing for repetitioning and putting people's property in jeopardy. The Seacrest veterans in West Haven, where we're able to have these elderly gentlemen, particularly who served in the war when the DA made a mistake and said that they were going to throw these people out, in essence. These are people in their 80s. We were able to reverse that, so that those folks can now stay there. And then in the Stratford area, we're getting close to a final disposition of the Stratford Army Engine Plant, so we can turn that into something that is profitable. So working here, working at the federal level, having an opportunity, giving a new administration, is very rewarding in terms of what this job is all about. And I've always indicated I'm blessed, because there isn't a place where you can work in almost every area that affects people in their daily lives. And historically, federal government has played a significant role in people's lives. All you have to do is to go back to Social Security, Medicare, GI Bill, civil rights, the Affordable Care Act, the ability of middle-income families to send their kids to school. So this job provides an incredible, again, opportunity to push the edge of the envelope to make the system work for people. It doesn't always do that, but it can do that. That is wherein lies its strength.
I want to ask you about infrastructure.
Sure.
That was one of Obama's big things.
Yes.
Twofold.
Mm-hmm.
It was get the economy going and shore up the infrastructure. That hasn't happened in 8 years.
No.
Why are you so confident that if Hillary takes the
Well, sometimes things are all timing as well, and is it the right time? Look, I watched Senator Dodd introduce family and medical leave legislation when I was working for him 7 years in a row. George Bush vetoed it. He introduced it again, and Bill Clinton, it was the very first bill that Bill Clinton signed. The question is, you don't get tired of doing these things. But I will talk about that because I was very disappointed. And if the president were sitting in this room, I would say that. He did put in, which was my legislation, a national infrastructure bank capitalized by the federal government for $5 billion a year, or for 5 years, $25 billion, which we're leveraging over $1 trillion in opportunity for rebuilding. Public-private partnerships, a bank actually that could issue bonds under the umbrella of the Treasury, that could take in pensions funds, sovereign wealth funds, etc. And we were going in that direction. But what he did in the first budget is instead of the $5 billion, they put in 2. I screamed bloody murder. From that point, then you see what happens is that, well, they said, well, we can't do this, and then we will put money under the transportation department. Well, this is not only transportation, as I pointed out before. So I've been very disappointed that we were not able to get this off the ground. And the other piece may be with regard to Obama, infrastructure, big concept. Historically, again, it was Lincoln, and this has got to come from the top, Lincoln did the Transcontinental Railroad. Teddy Roosevelt did parks. Franklin Roosevelt did the across the country. DeWitt Clinton did the steamboat, which changed things. What was President Obama's first priority? It was health care. Sometimes you can't move 2 big ships at the same time. So the view was that we had to do healthcare, and I agree. But Affordable Care Act, it was the direction that we needed to go in. Actually the Clinton people, her team called me before she introduced the bill, and we're talking about it. It's very similar to what I've been talking about. There's not all the same detail. The legislation I have, and it is the only National Infrastructure Bank piece of legislation that exists since 1994. Which, when I introduced this first, support by the unions and by the public securities, both sides of the aisle, if you will, in that respect. We lost in 1994, 12 years in the wilderness, on some of this stuff. I was optimistic we could do it, but it seems that it's much more timely now, and it is being talked about very, very seriously. The issue is going to be, how do you, the mechanism for financing it, and which we can, working on and working through how we go about doing this, which we can do, and I believe the federal investment is critically important, to be able to do that. But we've got some very smart finance people who know how to really do this thing and create the return on investment for people who put up the money for the bonds, etc. One last point. Europe is modeled on the European Investment Bank. They are doing mass transit all over Europe. I have a friend of mine who works with them. When Mayor Bloomberg was doing this, and Arnold Schwarzenegger and Ed Rendell, this whole effort on America Rebuilds. Marcia was just in Paris, high-speed rail. Do you know in our transportation bill, the recent transportation bill, there's no high-speed, there's no funding for high-speed rail. 21st century. How do we become a growth economy without this kind of thing? So I am optimistic. They have taken the ideas, we've spoken about it, and she has said in the first 100 days that she's going to be there. So, hey, you take people at their word, and you also press hard to make sure it happens.
At the state level, you're talking about education, how important education is.
Yes, yeah.
But
yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, you guys are also talking about closing some of the vocational schools.
That's at the state level.
That's what I'm saying.
At the state level. Big mistake, in my view. I spend a lot of time with the community colleges, with Voc Tech, and Platt Tech, Emmett O'Brien, Vinyl. Boy, these places are golden. I've been there. I've worked with the companies and with the education facility to talk about how you create the curriculum that provides these young people with the education for the future. But not only that, there's a job at the end of that effort, and that's where I think we need to go.
I just wanted to get you a spin.
Oh my gosh, no. Vocational education, that's where we, look, I've always believed education is the great equalizer. It really is, you know. People, it's not that long ago that families couldn't afford to send their kids to school, you know, and we've worked at making it easier with Pell Grants. What?
Last year.
Well, I'm just saying this is not, you couldn't think about it. Look, my folks, yeah, but it was there, they scrimped, they saved, they did whatever, they sacrificed, they went and they borrowed money to get me to school because it was about, you know, that was where your future was. And that's the story of so many of us. So that and again, at the federal level, we play a role in in creating opportunities. Pell Grants are you know, fabulous, and those people at my level who want to, you know, cut back on Pell Grants, you know, who cut back on a year-round Pell program is backwards. It really is backwards, and we've had so much emphasis on 4-year liberal arts colleges. That's good, that's great, you know, I went that route, but you know, you got to help people realize their dreams and their aspirations. Some folks don't want to do that, but going to a community college, going to a vocational school is where they can, in fact, realize their dreams. And that's where we have to put our time, our effort, and our resources in that basket, as far as I'm concerned. Big proponent, and at the federal level, fight like hell for money for these efforts.
How would you improve the Healthcare Act?
Sure. Yeah, no, very, very good question.
People running small businesses, and it's really onerous on them. It doesn't seem to be universally, I mean, even among moderates and Democrats.
Yeah. Well, let's take a look for a second, look, because and some of this you know, so but just bear with me, because I will answer that question. I've tried to think a lot about it. 100 years we hadn't had health care. Affordable health care. Transformative. Never described, sold, education provided about what all of the benefits of the Affordable Care Act. Today, 20 million people have insurance who did not have insurance before. Lowest rate of uninsured in the nation, 8.6%. Lowest rate of the uninsured in Connecticut, 6%. You have, I think it is 129 million Americans, pre-existing health care conditions. I'm one of them, cancer survivor. They can't discriminate against me. If someone has a child by cesarean birth, they can't discriminate against that family. If some child has asthma, and they can't say, we won't cover you because your child has asthma or is autistic. So the issue of pre-existing condition, unbelievable. The whole issue of the subsidies to help people to pay for the health insurance. The millions of people who've taken advantage of the screening and preventive care efforts. No co-pays on colonoscopies, cancer screenings, contraception, all of these. There is no co-pay. So that said, and I can go on and on. Up to 26 years old, you take advantage of your parents' insurance. You can't unravel that, nor should we unravel that. But are there consequences that have come out of transforming a system that had not done anything about for 100 years? You bet. My example is Social Security. Social Security.
That's the example I use all the time.
I've got to tell you, You know, first of all, they tried to impeach Frances Perkins, who was the Secretary of Labor at the time, because she persuaded FDR to go that route. But they were fearful that the system was never going to work. Why? So many people had the same last names. Smith, Brown, whatever it was. Social Security works. They've never missed a payment since its existence. So you have a big change in the system, transformative change in the system, bound to be some consequences expected, some unforeseen. And what are those? Increase in premiums, increase on deductibles, consolidation with mergers, etc., which is helping to drive the costs up. Increase in prescription drugs. The cost of prescription drugs has gone sky high. The Medicare Advisory Commission just put out a report that said they can attribute most of the increase in cost in Medicare to the increase in cost in prescription drugs. So now those are the issues that we should be focused on laser-like to try to address, not of repealing it, but of trying to look at how we do this. Public option. And I'll give you some things that you could do. I fought for a public option. I did. We didn't have the votes. We lost. I still talk about a public option. Hillary Clinton is talking about a public option. Bernie Sanders talked about a public option. There are some of the other things. You build on the ACA. You can do 3 visits to a doctor a year without that impeding your deductible. Provide up to a $4,000 credit against deductibles. But my big point is, yes, there are the consequences, the small business issues, addressing those. How do we make it so that this can be a workable system that provides people with health care that they can afford, instead of the view of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle that over 60 times they have brought up a vote on repealing the Affordable Care Act. That's not the direction to go in. You know, a young woman who died just in April, Mary Ann Wassell. Some of you may know her name, the Get in Touch Foundation. Yeah, Mary Ann, right.
I do know the name. Yeah.
Right, sure.
Breast cancer.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
And her daughter Betsy and her family are carrying it on. Mary Ann wrote to me, and she said to me, unless I can get health care coverage, I'm going to die. I can show you the email. I'll tell you, you just sit there and you just cry. The day she went on Church Street, and she was then able to get covered under the Affordable Care Act. When I wasn't there, she went up to our office, and she was sobbing. She was so happy. In her final comments, which her daughter read at her memorial service, was, I am so grateful to God for the Affordable Care Act, which helped me to stay alive. Now, I'm not making that up. That is a reality. People who have never had health care coverage in the past have had it. That was a good thing to do. It works. Let's make it work better. I'm not afraid to face.
What are the steps you need to take to do that?
We have to have the will to sit down to do it, to challenge it. Public option. Let's give people a choice. You've got insurance companies that are pulling out. I did something. I introduced it last week called the Drug Policy Review Board on prescription drugs, which means that these pharmaceutical companies, in terms of the pricing, let's take a look at that. As Hillary is talking about, let's provide a tax credit for people against the deductible. Let's go after the places where it appears not to be working. Willy-nilly with small businesses, the insurance company every year could drive the costs up. You have nothing to say. You now have medical loss ratio here, and people have been given millions of dollars in rebates because you need to spend, companies need to spend 80% on health care and not on no less than that, and 20% on administrative costs. Why? Let's move in the direction. People thought that a public option wouldn't work. We need to have a public option so that we can create more competition in the system. Folks didn't want to go, and they're not going to go to a universal system or change. That's not. We can't get the votes for. You can't get the votes for that. But Medicare works. Medicare works. And 98% of elderly are supported by, get their coverage through Medicare. So, but you have to figure out how you can, and I don't have all the answers for you, I just don't. But you have to say, okay, this piece is working, this isn't, how do we make that happen? Got to have the will to do it. And people have got to be sitting down and not saying that under no circumstances are they going to do it. What did Donald Trump said last night? First thing he's going to do is the worst thing that ever happened to the United States was the Affordable Care Act. I mean, that's not true. It's just not true,
Where are you on, how do we get these companies to pay
their fair share of taxes?
Yeah, and not only the taxes, but fair wages. Right now, it's, they're creating a lot of jobs, but they're all low-wage jobs. Many of them are low-wage jobs. Like you said, you have many people who are working hard and getting benefits.
Right.
How do we start that? Or
can
we?
But I tell you, it is a question of how you deal with the growth in the economy. But I'll say one thing about wages. I introduced wage theft legislation because we are looking at so many instances where people work, they work so many hours, and so many of those hours are off the clock, or they, not getting compensated, even in minimum wage or it's so that requires penalties for where we find that. And most recently, I think it was Chipotle who was tagged with wage theft. You just have to go after those folks, bad actors. But you're talking about something else, I think. Yeah. You're talking about how do we have. Let me ask it this way.
I like that. Those points you were making there, because it seems that certainly here in Connecticut, we have a lot of immigrants who are working and not getting paid.
Yeah.
We have a lot of them, but the businesses are still operating, and I don't understand.
Well, that's because you have to have penalties. You also have to have a reform of your immigration system, comprehensive immigration reform, so that people are coming out of the shadows and that they can't be exploited in the way that they're doing. And with some of these folks, if they were to complain and they complained about wages, or so, they say, yeah, okay, then you're out of a job. Adios. Right. They're fearful of their jobs. But I think overall you have to look at how you help to grow the economy in the state, and I think about that from the federal level. Infrastructure jobs. They're both. As I said, it's not just repairing roads and bridges. You're talking all kinds of opportunities for new technology. If you're looking at environmental infrastructure, energy grid, telecommunications, those things, they're jobs, and they're good paying jobs, but it's also an avenue for the development of new technology. And so public investment in this effort, I think, is critically important to where we go for the future. Biomedical research. We are a state that has the health assets, the education assets. You've got a Jackson Labs, in the Hartford area. You have Alexion here. These are engines of jobs. Even if you take a look at the construction of the building, as I said, there are 2,000 jobs created with the construction of the building. There are 1,000 permanent jobs now there, which are well-paying jobs. And that also takes with it, I don't mean lower-paying jobs, but jobs you don't have to be a scientist. Not everybody has to be a scientist, but there are the backup services which keep the place running that are important and pay good jobs. So we have infrastructure, got investment in biomedical research. We need to have substantial investment in manufacturing in this state. This is the arsenal of the Republic. We need to do this with our small manufacturers. I worked with the Greater New Haven Manufacturers Association, and they came to me. I didn't create this legislation. It is about small businesses being able to take up to, I think, $500,000, put it in a community bank at a good interest rate, and then they have up to 7 years, can't go beyond that. They can take the money out again at a low tax rate, but they have to pour the money back into either the building, the employees, or expansion, or doing what they want to do. It's the Manufacturing Reinvestment Act. It's modeled like an MRI in that case. But there are all kinds of ways in which we can provide incentives. You could take a look at lowering the tax rate for manufacturing in order to build it up. I'll give you two other examples. One is investment in our cities today. And I'm going to give you the example, and I'm going to quote this one here, because I found this article, and I think it's wild. This is about, if I can find it now, this is about, GE, when GE moved out. GE didn't leave because of wages. GE moved ostensibly because of quality of life. And this is email, October 18th. Why GE moved to Boston, according to its CEO. We wanted to get to a city. At the end of the day, I think for a company, we wanted to get into a place where there was more of an everyday, where you could get up and be part of an academic setting. So I think it was important to get to a city. I've been in Boston now 6 weeks. Just walk out the door. You're in the middle of an ecosystem that, quite honestly, for a big company, that's Jeff Immelt talking about.
You could have got that at Stanford.
Well, I'm telling you that's why it's important to deal with. Look, we've got wonderful cities here. We do. New Haven is my God, it really is an arts capital. It's a good quality of life. We have good schools. You've got to invest in New Haven, in Bridgeport, in Hartford, in Danbury, in Norwalk, in ways that which make it appealing for businesses to want to stay here and not to move out. The last piece I will mention to you in terms of this jobs and creating good paying jobs here for people, that is investing in education and in job training. Yeah. Those are critically important pieces of all of this.
You did say it's important to give the incentives or whatever for businesses to stay here. But from many laymen's point of view, we hand these businesses hundreds of millions of dollars, and in return, we're getting low-income wage jobs. And I'm just not...
No, I'm not so sure. I can take the most recent example. Look, I talk about investment in our... I don't know if I mentioned this. Our defense industry. Let's take a look at that. You take a look at EB, which is going to create 800 jobs. Pratt & Whitney said over the next 10 years, 8,000 jobs. We just dealt with Sikorsky, and I worked hard in that effort. Those are good-paying jobs, very good-paying jobs. They're also generational. You go to Sikorsky, you will see a father, a son, a daughter, a grandfather. They're all there. This is, and so look, there's nothing wrong with providing incentives. The fact is that, if you're only going to look at the pie as that big, and you got to stretch everything out of it. I'm looking at ways in which you expand it. And that's what these investments in infrastructure, in biomedical research, in manufacturing, in our defense industry, in our cities, then you create much more of a dynamic growth in our economy. The issue is about growing our economy, getting more revenue into the system, so you don't have to only rely on a property tax or so forth. That's where, if we keep trying to squeeze everything out of where we are now, we can't get there from here. We can't get there from here. And that's true at the federal level as well.
We need more pie. There's nothing wrong with more pie.
More pie, right. Blueberry, strawberry.
By the way, I want to tell you I love those gummy bears.
The gummy bears. I sent the gummy bears last time. Right. By the way, where, oh my God, where is it? Berkeley, all states, countries, etc. World Health Organization has come out in support of, here it is. Denmark, France, Mexico, Norway. South Africa is thinking about this, United Kingdom. Soda tax in Berkeley, Philadelphia. Proposed soda tax is in Albany, San Francisco, Oakland, Cook County, Illinois. Soda tax. We talked about that the last time.
I think Berkeley was the first to this.
Maybe, yeah. And Philadelphia just did this. They're going to take the money. I take the money and put it into health issues. And preventive health, etc. Philadelphia is going to do it in early childhood education. They're going to take the funding and put it there. So, anyway.
Yeah.
So, you seem very confident that Hillary is going to win and that there's going to be a lot more things getting done. What if she doesn't? How do you plan?
But if she doesn't win, she's going to win. I don't accept. Donald Trump is not going to win this election. You just take a look at the numbers. The numbers are there. You know, and
what inside information do you have that you know that? Every Democrat says that.
I'm looking at the average of the polls, and what you do. It was really interesting. I guess it was last week. There was a poll that was 4 points. I don't know if that was Wall Street Journal or whatever it was. 4 points. But then there was another poll that was 11 points. The only thing that the media focused on was the 4 point. What you do with polls is you take an average. And today, the average of the polls is 7 or 8 points up. That is significant. Barack Obama didn't enjoy that in the election. With John King moving his pieces around the board, sometimes I have to follow it, so that, in terms of the electoral college. I believe she's going to win. I'm very serious. I'm not being flip. And I believe that's for a lot of reasons. I think it's because of her conversation on making, and it goes back for me. Look, I'll be self-serving. I've been talking about the economy for a while, and that it's not working for everyone. And she is now talking about an economy that will work for everyone. And people are listening to that. I think also the issue on women is real. It's very, very real.
His focus on women or his focus?
His focus on women. And, or the demeaning way in which he talks about women.
Without realizing it's demeaning to them.
Well, that is a worse offense. I mean, if that's the case, if you don't know it. But I used to say, when I early on talked about equal pay for equal work, Paycheck Fairness Bill, one of the reasons I used to talk about it in this way is that in our society, the work that women do has not been valued. And I applied it there because, again, men and women in the same job, in your profession, in my profession, we are paid the same. No matter where we come from, no matter what our set of skills are. Look, when I went to the Congress, I had not ever run for the office before. There were people there who were there for 20 years. We had the same pay. But my point was that the work that women do is undervalued, under-respected. Now, when you listen to Donald Trump, it's more than just the work. I mean, it is so demeaning and disrespectful of women in this country. But I think the biggest issue is the economic issue for Hillary. And it's taken her a while to get it out, but she has. You know, that it's working for a few. It's not working for the many. And she's committed to making it work for everyone.
What about immigration? When are we ever going to tackle and fix immigration? Because this will constantly be a campaign issue, I'm assuming, as the years go on.
Well, look, and I must say that in the Senate, in a bipartisan way, they passed comprehensive immigration reform, and you don't have, you know, a lot of flighty people there who were doing it. You know, McCain, Leahy, etc. They came together on some very tough issues, but the House of Representatives would just not take it up. They would not take up any part of it. But there now is talking about the electorate. We talked about women, the demographics, immigrants. How do you see an immigrant population voting for Donald Trump when, you know, Mexicans are rapists and criminals and anyway, the whole litany. But the issue is, I think that we're going to see a big defeat in the Republican Party, and I think there's going to have to be some recalculation and discussion about what they need to do to get themselves back on track. That isn't to say that they aren't going to have a right wing that may continue to be opposed to everything, but I think they're going to have to figure out how, and I think Paul Ryan is going to have to figure out how we try to get this train back on the track. And I think immigration will be one of the big issues in that regard, that they're going to feel that they have to come to grips with if they are ever going to be viable as a political party.
This will be the first election season where the Green Party and the Libertarian Party really making a little noise.
Yeah.
Are you concerned 20 years down the road where about Republicans, Democrats, and the Green Party and the Libertarian?
Yeah, you know, third parties don't seem to be able to make it. You know, they don't.
This party didn't get very far.
I mean, the third parties don't seem, and look, they've got a raison d'etre. They, you know.
So you think it'll always be two parties?
I think there's two major parties, and I think that is where we're going to be. Unless, you know, you see something that is really significant in terms of a third party structure, etc. For the most part, though, I think the two-party system will prevail.
So we have our first black president, and now we have possibly our first female president.
Yeah. No, it's pretty extraordinary. That's pretty extraordinary. I don't know about any of you. It was the one night at the convention when Barack Obama spoke, and then Hillary Clinton came on to the podium there. And I looked at that and I said, did I think in my lifetime I would see an African American president and a woman president of the United States? And I had to say no. And there they were, the two of them on the stage, just embracing. And that's really pretty extraordinary. And in so many respects, I think that's one of the big issues. Not African American or women, they're part of it, but I think that's where the Republican, let me try to say this, I think it's maybe Republican Party, but not so much Republican Party, but people who are following Trump, etc. I think the trends in the United States, when you're looking at an African American president, a woman president, how quickly did we move on marriage equality? This is also becoming a nation that is much more secular. It's much more of an immigrant nation. You know, and today, the high percentage of people who are unmarried, you know, these are big trends. And I think that there are people fighting against those trends, you know, in their party, and they're pushing back. And it's like after the Industrial Revolution, there's some things you can't stop. They're going, so how do you work with it and in it and make it work instead of trying and being a counter pressure to it? I think that exists out there as a backdrop for some of what's happening here. Exciting
I'll be
time.
sure to reach you on election night for comments.
Talk to Jimmy.
You'll have
We're going to the Schubert. We're going to the Schubert again.
Schubert,
Yeah.
but is there a number we can call?
Oh,
We'll
gosh.
get that all out to you.
We'll get that to you. We will get that to you, yeah. See if I could go tap
Go
the
do it.
conversation.
It can't be everywhere.
No, I know, no, you know, but you guys are, you know, we'll work out, absolutely.
I just had a question
Sure.
about the issue of Syria. It's kind of been on the back burner during the election, but I think that people are becoming more aware with the coverage of what's going on there, especially with the kids. And do you think after the election there's going to be any kind of effort to addressing it more than we're addressing it now?
I think there has to be this is not just the United States, this is an international effort. I mean, we're watching the destruction of Aleppo and the destruction of families and these children, and it really is, it's devastating. There has been a suggestion that we do in northern Iraq, northern Syria, safe zones, so that we can deal with, you know, refugees and try to take people out of harm's way. I would love to see us move in that direction. I don't have a plan or so forth, but I think overall, I've been supportive of the president on airstrikes, but I think that overall, this is an issue that has to be hammered out diplomatically and at with the stakeholders in the party in an international way to move at this. And again, the role that Russia is playing and so forth in their, you know, strikes and bombings, etc., are only really adding to the.
You see Assad there a year from now?
I don't know.
It's a crazy situation.
Yeah, but that's, again, there's got to be the pressure that's brought to bear that deals with that. You can't have Russia being Assad's ally and, you know, in terms of bombing and rebels and killing civilians. So there's got to be a conversation, diplomatic, that includes them and other parts of the world as well, Europeans and the U.S. To try to bring some sanity.
Do you think that it would ever get to the point where there'd be talk of U.S. ground troops going in? No.
No. No appetite for U.S. ground troops.
I have one final question. I don't know if anybody else. What do you think about Trump's stance on making America an isolationist, so to speak, and moving away from being the bearer of everything to help other countries? What do you think about
Well, I don't know what direction you're talking about. I'm a strong proponent of, in opposition to the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, and it's not isolationism that is at the bottom of that. It really reflects what I've said at the outset about the economy and people and jobs not paying them enough. Our trade agreements have been a major cause of job loss and the suppression of wages over the years. And the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement is the template for that for this agreement is Korea, and Korea, which they told us they were going to create jobs. We've lost manufacturing jobs in the state of Connecticut as a As a result, the Koreans have shipped over 300,000 cars to the United States. We've shipped about 30,000 there. You've got countries who manipulate their currency, and no matter what you do in terms of tariffs on trade, when they make their goods cheaper than ours, then we are at a disadvantage. So in that context, it's not isolation. And to let you know that, and I was instrumental in this being put together. I didn't write it because I'm not an economist, but New Rules of the Road, a progressive approach to globalization. And these are new rules of the road for trade. We can have trade agreements that don't put American workers at risk, their jobs or their wages at risk. And we just haven't chosen with this agreement to do this, but to rather hamper environmental regulation, labor rights trampled all over, something called the Investor State Dispute Settlement, which allows foreign corporations to sue not in our courts, but in a separate tribunal if they feel that any law or anything that we have is detrimental to their bottom line. We've got the pharmaceutical industry looking for exclusivity for up to 12 years in terms of their patent protection, which will only drive up the cost of prescription drugs. So you can create, and it was all crafted in secrecy. And the people at the table were the special interests. Members of Congress were excluded from the process, and we have constitutional authority on trade agreements. But in that context, I think that I am opposed to Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. I'm not, again, isolationist, but a new, because I think we need to have trade. And it was Joe Stiglitz, who was the Nobel laureate in economics, who said, income inequality and wage stagnation are not a result of globalization or technology. The result is from the public policy choices that we make. And I believe that now his wanting to build a wall is, and he keeps talking about it. It's not, we'll go off that.
Were you getting at the idea about NATO countries paying more for their...
Imagine, I was in Ukraine, and it was also Europeans, people are frightened. We have an obligation that we signed a treaty on in terms of NATO, and we can't walk away from that, as he so willy-nilly describes that we can. That is, how do you maintain your stature of just walking away? But people are frightened in other countries about the direction that they see him wanting to take, the United States. In this way, and it's like agreements will mean nothing to him. Just walk away. Sanctions against Russia, sanctions against Iran. I mean, he is a big supporter of. It was, I don't know if it was him personally, but in their platform, they took out the language that really condemned Putin for annexing Crimea. That is astounding. In the Republican platform, people have put in that the condemnation of the annexation of Crimea. It was Trump's folks who pulled that out. I think that goes back to people like Manafort and others who had loads of dealings with Russia and so forth, and that don't want to call Putin for what he is, which is a bully and a thug. Annex Crimea, and it's okay. It's not okay. It's not okay. So, but that I think. You can't go down those roads. You can't. And I'll say one last thing about him. in one's lifetime, and you know this in your own professions, you accumulate a reservoir of knowledge about what you're doing and how you're doing it, and you react to situations that come along, and it's an intellectual curiosity about issues, solutions, problems, etc. I is a person who has no deep reservoir of knowledge, nor do I believe he has the intellectual curiosity to really master the fine points of what this job as President of the United States is all about. And in that regard, I think he has, I don't like demeaned women, but I think he's demeaned the office of the President and has been a major contributor to polluting our politics today. No one who does that should be President of the United States, in my view.
Do you think his candidacy is going to have a lasting effect on the political scene?
I'm afraid it might. I said you can't put the genie back in the bottle. I guess it was his son who came out the other day who said that they were going to maybe do a TV station and so forth. Well, I think that's part and parcel of what he's talking about, of undermining our electoral process. Undermining our electoral process. We're not a banana republic. We're not a banana republic. We have smooth transition of government here, you know? And last night, that's, you know. What did he say today? I think somebody told me, I didn't hear this, or his third party, that, you know, he will assert the outcome of the election if he wins.
Yes.
Is that what he said?
Yes.
Okay.
If he wins, it's not wins.
No, they kept trying to talk about Al Gore last night. I mean, my God, how bitter, sweet for Al Gore and Joe Lieberman. You know, it was about Florida. You know, they couldn't call the election in Florida, and that was not known before. So, you know, I think somebody said it last night to Jeffrey Lord, my God, it's beneath you to say something like this, you know? So,
do you think there's any chance that any of these other candidates, say like Evan McMullen or Gary Johnson, if they were to win a couple states and it would be thrown to the House of Representatives, do you think that's... I don't think this election is going to wind up in the House of Representatives.
I don't, you know. I think when your point is well taken. I think there are going to be a group of people that are out there who are the far right, who are going to be continually badgering Hillary Clinton as president. Some have said, don't think there won't be an attempt to try to impeach her. You know, it might spring up.
I have no doubt.
You know, so.
What about any violence? Would that be something that would be a concern? Like there's been some talk of like, if Trump doesn't win, that, you know, the possibility of assassination and stuff like that. Do you think that it could go that far?
I don't, you know, I don't think, I can't imagine us going in that direction, but.
I said that about Obama too.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you do know that, I don't know either, but you don't know, I think none of us know the half of the number of threats that surround these folks on a daily basis.
I don't think I've ever seen like a group of supporters so with such a propensity to violence as his supporters.
Well, he plays on emotion, so that's...
Yeah,
you know,
but I mean, if he were to lose, if, you know, any of them could go as far as to threaten the winner.
Well, you know, you can't condone violence in these questions, no matter where it comes from. You just can't. That's not the way, you know, as I say, these are hallmarks of what our democracy is about. And if that's something that we have to hold on to. And our electoral process is, you know, what is it? Many millions of votes cast, and they got 31 cases of voter fraud. I mean, you know, our system is a good system. It's a solid system. It's not, rigged. It's not. But anyway, that's what happens. I guess if you figure you're going to lose, you might as well go there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. It's wonderful to talk to you. I appreciate the opportunity.